March 13th, 2025, 1:25 in the morning. Structural engineer Roberto Mancuso was documenting foundation damage in a Bagnoli apartment complex when magnitude 4.4 seismic waves ripped through the building. What he recorded was not earthquake destruction, it was engineering failure on a systematic scale. Support beams buckled along calculated stress points, load-bearing walls developed fractures in geometric patterns, and ceiling systems collapsed with surgical precision that matched no natural disaster he had witnessed. Within hours, evacuation orders covered dozens of buildings across Naples, all showing identical structural or compromised signatures. Emergency assessment teams discovered acceleration readings that exceeded design specifications for residential construction and ground forces reaching 0.6 to 1G in populated districts. Buildings throughout the caldera were not just damaged by seismic activity, they were being systematically tested beyond their engineered capacity. Advanced structural analysis revealed the terrifying scope. Campi Flegrei has converted Naples into an urban-scale engineering experiment, applying incremental pressure through 18,500 earthquakes over 3 years. Each tremor, each thermal cycle, each ground deformation event pushes metropolitan infrastructure closer to comprehensive failure. The supervolcano has been calibrating the exact forces needed to compromise an entire city's structural foundation. Dr. Junio Iervolino's research confirms what evacuation teams are documenting. Reference earthquake magnitudes of 4.4 to 5.1 represent structural failure thresholds for buildings not designed for volcanic seismic loads. The March event proved something worse. Campi Flegrei can generate these forces systematically, repeatedly, with increasing intensity. When a supervolcano begins engineering the systematic failure of metropolitan infrastructure, what happens to residential buildings designed for normal earthquakes but subjected to volcanic-grade destruction testing? How many structures can survive geological forces that strengthen with every seismic pulse? To understand the devastation unfolding across Naples, we need to examine Campi Flegrei's long history of weaponizing geological forces against human settlements. This volcanic battlefield has been testing the structural limits of civilization for over 500 years. In 1538, the Monte Nuovo eruption obliterated Roman towns and temples through violent ground deformation, twisting ancient stone into unrecognizable debris. But it was the slow-motion destruction during the Bredicesimo crisis from 1969 to 1972 that revealed Campi Flegrei's talent for infrastructure sabotage. Over just 3 years, the seemingly stable ground beneath Pozzuoli heaved upward by over 6 feet, warping foundations, cracking walls, and forcing mass evacuations as buildings became uninhabitable. The seismic torture test continued from 1982 to 1984, as a fresh round of uplift rendered the entire Pozzuoli harbour district unusable, damaging over 8,000 buildings and displacing 40,000 residents. Campi Flegrei had discovered a new weapon, the power to undermine human engineering at a city-wide scale through gradual geological pressure. And now, that destructive methodology has entered a terrifying new phase. From 2005 to 2020, the caldera's deformation shifted from sudden uplift to a slow war of attrition, as yearly ground movements began settling foundations and propagating deep cracks through ancient stone and modern concrete alike. Then from 2021 to 2024, seismic activity escalated into an all-out infrastructure assault. Structural assessment reports document over 18,500 earthquakes in just 3 years, each tremor applying calculated stress to key weak points in the urban framework. On May the 20th, 2024, a magnitude 4.4 quake forced evacuations at schools and even a prison as buildings exceeded their seismic resilience. But it was the March 13th, 2025 event that exposed the true extent of Campi Flegrei's urban combat engineering. Damage surveys revealed a chilling pattern. The seismic waves did not strike randomly, but instead traced paths of minimum resistance through the cityscape, targeting structural vulnerabilities with tactical precision. Dr. Junio Iervolino's research team at the University of Naples Federico II confirmed that reference earthquake magnitudes of 4.4 to 5.1 represent structural failure thresholds for buildings not designed for volcanic seismic loads, and that current acceleration values are exceeding design specifications. Translation: Campi Flegrei is systematically learning how to dismantle a major metropolitan area by identifying and exploiting the exact forces modern engineering cannot withstand. It is not natural destruction, it is calculated demolition on a volcanic scale. To visualize the infrastructure nightmare now engulfing Naples, imagine a city built on a living weapon system, a vast geological testing ground probing for weaknesses in the urban armour. That is exactly what Campi Flegrei has become, a subterranean simulation framework for modelling the systematic failure of human construction. Geophysical mapping now confirms a chilling tactical pattern. The volcanic fault network that generates Campi Flegrei's earthquakes is not randomly distributed. It is a spiderweb of tectonic weaponry zeroing in on Naples' most densely populated districts. Tracing ground accelerations shows a shocking calculus of destruction at work. These are not earthquake energies radiating symmetrically from the epicenter. They are surgically precise waves, constructively interfering along paths that concentrate maximum force on high occupancy structures, hospitals, schools, apartment complexes, the architectural sinews that knit a city into a functioning whole. It is a seismic sniping system operating with merciless efficiency. And that military precision is amplified by a second geological bombardment invisible to human eyes. Campi Flegrei's hydrothermal network is not just a brewing steam blast hazard, it is a structural infiltration agent. Thermal scans now reveal a systematic expansion of the caldera's underground plumbing, delivering militarized heat to key infrastructure targets. Pozzuoli's rapidly buckling harbour district sits on top of the most intense thermal anomaly, where cyclic deformation from steam chamber pulsing is cracking concrete and twisting steel with the unseen tenacity of a machine press. This hydrothermal stealth attack exploits a critical vulnerability in human engineering. Our building codes are not designed for thermal cycling on a volcanic scale. Every steam pulse, every microscale expansion and contraction of concrete slabs and rebar bundles is another wound to the structural integrity that infrastructure relies on. That cumulative attrition is now accelerating faster than human intervention can keep pace. The damage reports filtering in from across Naples all point to the same lethal feedback loop, hammering the cityscape into submission. Ground deformation tilts foundations ever so slightly. Those millimeter misalignments focus the next earthquake's energy onto load-bearing joints and support beams already under thermal stress. The seismic pounding cracks masonry, buckling floor plates, knocking buildings out of vertical alignment. Hydrothermal heating then infiltrates those fresh wounds, exploiting cracked stone and overstressed steel to prepare the next target for seismic elimination. Every cycle of this geological torture press nudges the entire metropolis closer to a catastrophic tipping point. The mathematical reality is brutally simple. Naples was not built to withstand a militarized caldera probing its infrastructure grid for systematic points of failure. The city's building codes are designed for seismic resistance against single concentrated earthquakes. They have no provision for distributed geological forces, conducting sustained stress tests on every school, every apartment block, every power substation. When the very bedrock beneath a metropolis becomes an active combatant, the war is lost before the first evacuation siren ever sounds. and the structural data streaming in from across the caldera is a live feed of that defeat in progress. Municipal inspection logs show a chilling pattern of load-bearing walls, developing fractures not randomly, but in geometric webs that trace the transmission of seismic stress with mathematical precision. Pedestrian bridges are warping along their seams, not from instantaneous earthquake shaking, but from the gradual deformation of their underlying anchorages. Roberto Mancuso's March 13th damage report was not a record of a standard earthquake scenario. It was forensic evidence of a city being shaken apart beam by beam, floor by floor, building by building, by a geological weapons system that learns with every fresh assault. Seismographs now confirm what the urban autopsy already revealed. Campi Flegrei's infrastructure shattering earthquake swarms are not just increasing in frequency, they are growing in targeted intensity, each event imparting more destructive energy than the last into the city's structural framework. Ground acceleration data from the latest magnitude 4.4 event registered between 0.6 G and 1 G in populated areas, a shock dose of kinetic energy exceeding the design specifications of even modern construction. For every high occupancy building now slated for emergency evacuation, dozens more are silently inching closer to their own structural breaking point. The March seismic bombardment was not a freak accident of geology. It was a live fire demonstration that Campi Flegrei has effectively reverse-engineered the physics needed to dismantle a major population centre one apartment block at a time. And the blueprint for that demolition project is now written into the urban landscape itself. For the 900,000 residents now witnessing their city transformed into an open-air structural mechanics experiment, the unfolding disaster is all too real. But the scope of the threat extends far beyond individual building failures. The true infrastructure apocalypse facing Naples is not a localized episode of urban shaking damage. It is a metropolitan-scale hollowing out, a geophysical gutting of the city's vital organs that could trigger a cascading network collapse. Transportation links are often the first domino to fall in a seismic attrition scenario. Bridges and overpasses built without volcanic load factors quickly become impassable as ground deformation twists their support anchors. Roads buckle and warp as their underlayers liquefy from hydrothermal bombardment. Public transit lines shudder to a halt as railways distort beyond repair. In a city under permanent seismic assault, every bus route, every highway, every metro station becomes another potential structural kill zone. But it is the threat to utilities that exposes the true existential nature of Campi Flegrei's infrastructure war. Naples' subterranean lifelines, such as water mains, gas pipes, electrical conduits, and fibre optic bundles, are all built to the same obsolete codes as the buildings above. Every earthquake-buckled street now carries an invisible payload of burst water connections and shattered gas lines, a circulatory network bleeding the city of basic services. Power substations built on cracked foundations become ticking blackout bombs. Even the ancient aqueducts that have sustained Naples for centuries are now active participants in her structural execution. For emergency responders already stretched to the breaking point, this infrastructure implosion is a countdown to mass casualty catastrophe. Every hospital evacuated due to seismic overstress, every fire station destabilized by ground deformation, every 911 call center shaken off its foundation is another vector of the city's immune system going offline. In a volcanic siege scenario, disasters within disasters become the new normal. Earthquakes trigger utility failures, which trigger transportation breakdowns, which trigger hospital collapses in a self-reinforcing chain reaction that grinds the gears of urban life to a shuddering halt. And in the shadow of a militarized caldera, even evacuation carries no guarantee of deliverance. Campi Flegrei's tactical terrain is not confined to the metropolitan footprint. It is a regional geophysical weapons range capable of taking entire chunks of southern Italy offline. Landslides from seismically weakened slopes can sever highway escape routes in an instant. Bridge failures can cut thousands of refugees off from resupply convoys and medical aid. Even Italy's legendary rail system, the structural circulatory network that has held the country together for generations, is now an elongated hostage to Campi Flegrei's sonic demolition teams. In a nation where vital social and economic functions are built on a backbone of aging concrete and steel, there is no refuge from geological forces that can degrade infrastructure at a regional scale. And the urban combat theatre of Naples is now the unquestioned Stalingrad of that conflict. 900,000 residents live in a built environment that has suddenly become the stress test laboratory for its own disintegration. Centuries of architectural heritage are crumbling under calculated seismic sabotage. An entire metropolis is discovering in real time that its existence depends on engineering tolerances its foundations were never designed to withstand. This is infrastructure. Armageddon concentrated into a single radial target, the beating heart of southern Italy's economic and cultural identity stretched across an active geophysical killing floor. And the scariest part, the structural post-mortems now rolling in from across the caldera all confirm that Campi Flegrei's war on the built environment has just begun. Every fresh census of seismically shattered buildings, every damage survey of hydrothermally decayed streets, every assessment of buckled schools and hospitals is not just a record of battles already lost. It is a predictive schematic, a blueprint of urban targets ripe for the next wave of assault, as the volcano refines its weapons to systematically shatter mankind's structural armour. 18,500 calculated seismic strikes over the last 3 years alone. An entire metropolitan region hammered by a barrage of geophysical force that has no parallel in the modern urban world. This is not infrastructure damage on a volcanic scale. It is a city being tactically dismantled by a geological adversary that can command the very bedrock to join the siege. And it is a preview of the structural apocalypse that awaits every major population centre in Campi Flegrei's crosshairs. When a supervolcano's seismic kill zone encompasses one of the most densely developed regions on Earth, evacuation sirens and building codes become flimsy shields against a sentient force of nature that has 1 million years of practice identifying civilization's structural weak points. The question now is not whether the caldera will compromise the cities above it, but how many millions will still live in the danger zone when the final demolition sequence begins. Because Naples is not facing an earthquake scenario, it is fighting a seismic war with an enemy that owns the battlefield. And the blueprint for the coming urban apocalypse is already written in the rubble of its infrastructure.